Russian soldiers just surrendered to a machine, not to a soldier, not to a unit of infantry that had them outgunned and surrounded, not to a human being of any kind. They raised their hands and gave up to a robot, a ground robot rolling toward them on wheels and tracks while drones buzzed overhead, and not a single Ukrainian soldier anywhere in sight. This happened on April 13, 2026. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed it publicly. For the first time in the history of this war, and quite possibly for the first time in the history of modern warfare, an enemy position was captured, soldiers were taken prisoner, and territory was liberated, all carried out exclusively by unmanned platforms, ground robots, and drones. Zero Ukrainian infantry, zero Ukrainian casualties. This is signal drop. And what we are about to walk you through is not just this single extraordinary event. It is the full picture of what Ukraine has been building toward for years. Why this moment is not an isolated incident, but the opening demonstration of an entirely new way of fighting. And what it means for a Russian military that built its entire 2026 strategy around one assumption that just got shattered in a single operation. That assumption was that manpower wins wars. It turns out Ukraine had a different plan, and the robots just showed what that plan looks like in practice. Let us set the scene properly. Ukraine has a mobilization crisis. Approximately 2 million Ukrainians are currently evading the draft. The country has been fighting for over 4 years. The human cost has been enormous. Finding, training, equipping, and deploying enough soldiers to hold a 1,200-kilometer front line while simultaneously mounting counteroffensives is one of Ukraine's most persistent and most difficult challenges. Putin has been betting on this challenge becoming insurmountable. Keep sending Russian soldiers, regardless of cost, until Ukraine runs out of people willing to fight. For much of the war, it has represented a genuine vulnerability for Ukraine. Ukraine's answer to that vulnerability is not more conscription drives. It is machines. Robots that do not need to be conscripted, drones that do not evade the draft, autonomous systems that do not get tired, do not refuse orders, do not experience the kind of psychological breakdown that leads to desertion. And on April 13th, that answer produced something the world had never seen before. Here is what the event actually looked like from the perspective of the Russian soldiers who experienced it. You are dug into a defensive position somewhere in contested Ukrainian territory. You have no communications. Starlink has been cut. Telegram is blocked. Your commanders have not sent word in hours. You do not know if reinforcements are coming. You do not know if anyone even knows where you are. Then you hear it, the unmistakable buzzing of drones overhead. Ukraine has found your position. You grip your rifle and prepare for the infantry assault that you know is coming next. Only it does not come. The buzzing gets louder. FPV kamikaze drones start striking around your position. You peek out to see where the soldiers are. Where is the infantry? There are no troops. What you see instead, rolling toward you from the distance, are machines. Tracked and wheeled ground robots moving deliberately toward your position. Metal platforms that small arms fire will barely scratch. You try to raise your rifle. An FPV drone immediately dives toward you. You pull back. The drone backs off. The message is clear. Move aggressively and the drones strike. Stay still and the ground robots close in. You have no support coming. No communications to call for help. The machines surrounding you do not negotiate, do not tire, do not lose courage, and do not care about their own survival. You raise the white flag. You and your comrades surrender to robots. And Ukraine adds another piece of territory to its column of gains without risking a single Ukrainian life to do it. Before we get into exactly what systems Ukraine used and the numbers behind this program, hit subscribe and turn on notifications right now. Signal Drop covers exactly this kind of depth every single week, the full picture, not just the headline. Stay with us because the numbers in the next section will genuinely surprise you. Now, some of you may remember hearing about individual incidents like this before on this channel, and you would be right too. The April 13th event is not the first time Russian soldiers have surrendered to Ukrainian unmanned systems. In January, the manufacturer of Ukraine's droid TWW762 ground robot claimed their AI-equipped platform had successfully taken 3 Russian soldiers prisoner, accompanied by video footage. In March, 4 Russian soldiers surrendered to a Ukrainian drone equipped with a loudspeaker. As early as August 2024, a loudspeaker drone prompted an abandoned Russian soldier to surrender. Each incident was significant, but each was also isolated. What happened on April 13th is categorically different, and the difference is exactly why Zelensky announced it as a world first rather than another entry in an existing category. This operation combined surrenders with territorial liberation. The Russian soldiers did not just give up. The unmanned systems that forced their surrender then held and secured the position. Ukraine gained ground without infantry, without casualties, without any of the human cost that every other territorial gain in this war has required. That is the threshold that has just been crossed. Not robots forcing individual soldiers to give up, robots capturing positions, robots liberating territory, robots conducting the full sequence of a military operation: identification, suppression, capture, and control that previously required human soldiers at every stage. Zelensky confirmed the specific robotic systems Ukraine has been deploying. He named the Volya, Termit, Ardal, Ratel, Protector, and Snake as part of Ukraine's ground robot arsenal. Each serves different functions across the logistics, evacuation, and combat roles that Ukraine's robot army has been expanding into. But beyond the specific platforms, Zelensky revealed a number that puts the scale of Ukraine's robotic operations in perspective. Over the last 3 months, Ukraine's robotic systems have been involved in 22,000 missions. 22,000 times in 90 days, a robot went somewhere that a human soldier would otherwise have had to go. 22,000 times, a machine absorbed the risk instead of a person. As Zelensky framed it himself, lives were saved more than 22,000 times. A robot went into the most dangerous areas instead of a soldier. The growth trajectory of Ukraine's robot program is as significant as any single event within it. In November 2025, frontline robots completed approximately 2,900 missions in a single month. By March 2026, that monthly mission count had reached 9,000, more than 3 times the November figure in just 4 months. Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi confirmed the momentum directly. Robotic complexes performed 50% more tasks in March than they had in February. Month-over-month acceleration, not a plateau, not a leveling off. A continuing steep increase in the volume of robotic operations Ukraine is executing every single month. The unit adoption numbers explain why. In November 2025, 67 Ukrainian military units were using ground robots. By March 2026, that number had grown to 167 units, 2.5 times as many units deploying robots. The growth in robot deployment is not driven by a few units doing dramatically more. It is driven by the program spreading to new units continuously as more commanders understand what these systems can do and integrate them into their operations. Syrskyi also revealed something else in April that connects directly to the territorial gains Ukraine is achieving. Ukraine's UAVs caused 29% more enemy losses in March than they had during February. Month over month, the drone-caused casualty rate is not just high, it is still rising. Combine that with reporting that 96% of Russia's March casualties were caused by drones, and you have a picture of a battlefield being decided almost entirely by Ukrainian unmanned systems. Not infantry, not artillery, not missiles. Drones and robots accounting for the overwhelming majority of every Russian soldier who dies or is wounded in this war. We are halfway through the full picture, and the next section is where this story shifts from military statistics to economic reality. The cost calculation behind Ukraine's robot program is the argument that Russia has no answer for. Subscribe to Signal Drop right now so you never miss this level of analysis. Back to the story. The economics of the robot program deserve serious attention. Foreign Policy reported that the average cost to build a Ukrainian ground robot is less than $20,000. $20,000 for a system that can conduct logistics runs, evacuate wounded soldiers, and now capture enemy positions and take prisoners. For comparison, a Ukrainian soldier on the front lines earns approximately $2,500 per month. In 8 months, a single soldier costs more in salary alone than a ground robot costs to build. And that calculation does not include training costs, equipment costs, medical treatment for wounds, or the irreplaceable human value of a life that cannot be assigned a monetary figure. A robot does not require food. It does not need clothing, medical care, psychological support, or leave rotations. It does not desert. It does not refuse orders. It does not experience PTSD. It costs $20,000 to build, and then it works until it is destroyed. Andrei Beletsky, commander of Ukraine's Third Army Corps, believes that robots will reduce Ukraine's frontline infantry requirements by 30% by the end of 2026 alone. And looking further ahead, some in Ukraine's military establishment project that as many as 80% of the missions previously requiring soldiers could eventually be carried out by UAVs and robots. If that projection is even partially realized, the manpower calculus of this war changes entirely. Russia's population advantage, the foundation of its attritional strategy, becomes irrelevant in direct proportion to how many tasks that currently consume Ukrainian soldiers get transferred to machines. There are challenges in the robot program that deserve honest acknowledgement. Russia's electronic warfare presents a real and ongoing problem. Ukraine's robots run on software that requires continuous updates, often monthly, to counter new jamming technologies that Russia deploys. An EW countermeasure that works 1 month can be overcome the next, requiring a software patch before Ukraine's robots can operate effectively again. But here is the important context for those challenges. They are engineering problems. Problems that skilled engineers can solve, are solving, and will continue to solve as the program matures. They are not fundamental limitations on what the technology can achieve. They are friction in a system that is nonetheless producing 9,000 missions per month, a 50% increase in robotic task completion between February and March, and the first infantry-free territorial liberation in the history of this war. Now let us zoom out and look at what all of this means for Russia's strategic position. Because the April 13th event is not just a tactical milestone, it is a direct refutation of the most important assumption underlying Russia's entire approach to this war. The Institute for the Study of War reported that Putin believed Russia could simply outlast Ukraine, its drones, and all of the Western support Ukraine has been receiving. 700,000 Russian soldiers inside Ukraine was supposed to be the decisive advantage. Manpower would wear down technology. Ukraine would run out of people before Russia ran out of cannon fodder. Putin was building his strategy on a battlefield that no longer exists. The battlefield of 2026 is one where Ukraine's drones and robots operate in kill zones that destroy Russian soldiers before they ever reach the front line. Where the soldiers who do reach the front face FPV drones, ground robots, AI-guided interceptors, and autonomous systems that do not tire, do not lose courage, and do not run out of the will to fight. Throwing more cannon fodder at this battlefield does not wear down Ukraine's defenses. It feeds them. Every additional Russian soldier sent into a kill zone saturated with Ukrainian drones is not a drain on Ukraine's resources. It is a target. Inside Russia itself, Ukraine's long-range drone campaign has been compounding the damage. Ukraine has been systematically targeting Russia's oil export infrastructure throughout March and into April. Attacks against Russia's Baltic seaports, specifically the terminals at Primorsk and Ust-Luga, led to Russia losing access to facilities handling approximately 45% of its oil exports. In Primorsk alone, Ukraine's drone strikes caused approximately $200 million worth of stored Russian oil to burn, and that figure does not capture the ongoing revenue loss from oil that has not been able to leave those ports while repairs continue. And Ukraine's drone range keeps expanding. Zelensky revealed in April that the furthest a Ukrainian drone has traveled to strike a target is now 1,750 kilometers from Ukraine's border. 1,750 kilometers. That is roughly 1,080 miles. He added two words that should concern every military planner in Moscow. There will be more. Ukraine's drone range is not a fixed parameter. It is a design specification that Ukrainian engineers are continuously pushing outward. The strikes that Russia considered safely distant from Ukraine's reach 18 months ago are now within range. The strikes that Russia considers safely distant today may not be within range next month. On the automation front, Ukraine's Hornet drones were equipped in April with automated targeting systems that allow them to identify, track, and strike Russian targets without any operator input once launched toward a target area. Autonomous from launch to impact. No human in the loop for the final engagement. These systems join a growing family of automated Ukrainian weapons being deployed at scale. Ukraine is fielding approximately 30% more strike drones on front lines right now than Russia. More drones, more automation, more capability per operator. Here is what all of this adds up to. Ukraine has demonstrated for the first time in the history of warfare that unmanned systems can conduct the complete sequence of a military operation, from surveillance to suppression to capture to territorial control, without any human soldiers being involved. That is not a proof of concept anymore. It is a proven operational reality. The systems that achieved it are being produced by 280 companies at a cost of less than $20,000 each. They are being deployed by 167 military units and counting. They are completing 9,000 missions per month and accelerating. The cost calculation favors Ukraine overwhelmingly. The industrial foundation is deep and diversified. The operational experience being accumulated every month is irreplaceable. And the trajectory of every relevant metric, mission count, unit adoption, casualty impact, territorial effect, is pointing in one direction. Putin bet on manpower winning this war. Ukraine built robots. On April 13th, Russian soldiers raised their hands to machines, not because they were cowards, because they made the only rational calculation available to them when confronted with technology that outmatched them in every dimension that matters on the modern battlefield. Zelensky said it plainly. The future is already on the front line, and Ukraine is building it. Russia has no answer for what that future looks like, and every month that passes makes the gap between what Ukraine has and what Russia can counter harder to close. This is Signal Drop. If today's coverage gave you a clearer picture of where this war's technology balance actually stands, subscribe right now and turn on notifications. Because the next story we are tracking is the one that explains what happens when Ukraine's robot army meets Russia's last remaining tactical advantage on the Eastern Front. That story drops next. Don't miss it.